Jacek, I think, has 5 defenses and would need 7 more, but that doesn't speak to the fact that DJ could extend this thing to 20 if he stays at 125 pounds. But Kenny, this sequence, this submission, this finish, and this record, which he's so prioritized, to get it that way was one of the more seminal moments, I think, in UFC history, and it couldn't happen to a better guy.
Yeah, I mean, talk about breaking the record with authority. And we certainly knew that he had the capability to get a finish against a guy like Ray Borg, who is still young, still learning the game. But to do it again and again under pressure, this is the Demetrious Johnson that, again, continues to improve. He's not satisfied with his level, with his current level. Yes, he's still head and shoulders above everybody else, but he's still working hard in the gym, improving as a martial artist, and that really is what separates him. And to show, perfect fundamentals and mix in things in combat that we haven't seen before, like that suplex right into an armbar, shows that this is a very special fighter and a very special dude, and it's an absolute honor to see him work. This is a guy that truly has no weaknesses, and I mean, for Greg Jackson and Mike Wigglejohn and any camp really that tries to prepare for someone like Demetrious Johnson, it must give him fits and headaches. Just trying to figure out what the hell you have to do to beat that guy. You need to have an insane skill set, but also have the experience to go out there and execute. And Demetrious Johnson, because he has such an advantage when it comes to experience and his skills and his confidence, his mental approach, and the fact that he's surrounded by excellent coaches, just makes that extremely difficult. And we were kind of comparing his title run to other greats like Muhammad Ali and even to the great Joe Louis, who I think defended his belt 23 times. And he absolutely has the ability to do that. If he really wanted to stay in the game for that long, I believe he's one of the few who could actually reach that milestone. So Demetrious Johnson, again, just showing everybody why he is the best pound fighter on the planet.
And props, as you sort of alluded to there, to Matt Hume and his striking coach, the unheralded Brad Kurtzen, who have just done a tremendous job. And in terms of the strategy and game planning, right, they wanted him bigger and stronger for Wilson Hayes. They tie-clinched the hell out of John Dodson, right? This Jackson Wink camp, Kenny, has now thrice failed to solve Demetrious Johnson. I know Dodson came close, I believe, on one occasion. But absolutely remarkable what this fighter has been able to accomplish in modern-day mixed martial arts. And I know some people are going to denigrate the level of competition, and I'm not going to sit here with a hot microphone and compare his strength of schedule to John Jones's. But I also think people take that a little bit too far, right? I mean, he disposed of an Olympic gold medal wrestler on the feet in a couple minutes, right? Cejudo, I think, is an entirely different animal right now, and were he to get through Sergio Pettis in current form, that's a fight that I would like to see. Joseph Benavidez was no slouch on either occasion when Demetrious Johnson fought him. John Moraga, I think, showed you this weekend how the improvements that he has made since fighting Demetrious Johnson and taking out the very highly thought of Magomed Bibulatov. But, Kenny, that's really the only knock, right, is people who, first of all, love to cut a guy when he's up to begin with and try to bring him back down. But that seems to be the only real knock on DJ, right? People said early, oh, he's not finishing guys. 7 of his 11 title defenses have been finishes. I got to think that holds up with most champions, if not Stipe Miocic, So for me, Kenny, I feel like the level of competition is what it is. It's better than it is publicly thought of. And I think this is the greatest of all time. And he's starting to distance himself, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing that I would hold against him, and that I have held against him, was the level of competition. And again, I don't think there's anybody left at this point. I think Sergio Pettis, Henry Cejudo, they will get their opportunities. Sergio, of course, has not faced Demetrious Johnson. Cejudo has, and I agree with you. He is a different guy. But how much experience can they get in that time frame before they do fight someone like Demetrious? How much better can they get? That is a big question. But I agree with you. As far as the skills that Demetrious is showing out there, he's the best in the world. He's the best pound-for-pound fighter on the planet. And I think one thing that would probably really put the nail in that coffin would be a super fight. And I think as much as I love Demetrious Johnson, and I think it's a part of what makes him so great, is the fact that he is humble and he doesn't kind of hype up a lot of his possible next opportunities. We talked to him after the fight, and he said, I'm just going to go home and rest and blah, blah, blah. And that's great. But one thing that if he does want to make more money is, and this is something that Conor does very well, Tony Ferguson is doing it, already hyping his next fight, Kevin Lee did it very well, is as soon as that fight's over, you have a name in your mouth that you're ready to speak about. And I think one thing would be if Demetrious Johnson went out there and talked about a Cody Garbrandt fight or a TJ Dillashaw fight, not only will he make more money, but you beat one of those guys, man, and that's it. There's no argument. He went up and did fight at 135 pounds, or maybe they do a catch weight fight at 130 pounds. And if he wins that fight, then I think it's easy to say that, that's the greatest fighter on the planet, pound for pound, no discussion.
And I would think he'd want to do it at 135 pounds so he could go out and win a UFC bantamweight title. And if he were to lose that fight to the Dillashaw-Garbrandt winner potentially, then he could go back to 25 and try to extend a record that, Kenny, he cares a lot about, right? Demetrious Johnson talked about this record very early on as the UFC flyweight champion. So now that he has it, perhaps he'll be willing to open up that door. Certainly when it comes to the UFC bantamweight rankings, it's a little tricky right now. Dominic Cruz and Jimmy Rivera are going to fight at the end of the year. But again, with Dillashaw and Garbrandt, a lot of people think that this is a fight that could be so good, Kenny, that they would immediately run it back. You also have Rafael Assunção lurking and streaking. So 35 has never been better, but I would think it would be a good opportune time for Demetrious Johnson, especially given the shine that I think Dillashaw and Garbrandt potentially could receive being on this pay-per-view with George St. Pierre's return. If I'm DJ. And this title defense, too, Kenny, became more high profile when it moved from UFC 215 to 216. So for me, I think it would be a great time for DJ to maybe move up and try to take on a mega fight. And Kenny, I would say candidly, too, my only wish is that financially this guy would be set for life when he retires, because this is Michael Jordan. And hopefully he can realize the $1 or $2 million paydays at least that sort of would dovetail with his accomplishments.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about, is that, I'm not saying it's completely Demetrius's fault. However, there is the business side of things, and the UFC has the numbers of who's tuning in to watch him fight and all that stuff. But if he can go in there and just say, hey, listen, this is the fight I want. Let's get people excited about a possible Garbrandt-Dillashaw fight now. Let that momentum build, especially coming off of that insane win that he just had. He needs to push a little bit more investment into the marketing side of things. But as far as his work, his work is just there's nothing that you can't deny him that spot of being the GOAT.
8 UFC bonuses now for Demetrious Johnson as well. So again, anybody who wants to say, "Oh, I don't like watching the little guy." I mean, this guy. How can you not like watching this guy, right? I mean, he is almost single-handedly going to end the argument for a lot of the guys out there that don't like watching guys who weigh less than them fight.
He does it all.
Yeah, he does it all. All right, so again, we could sit here and talk about DJ for a half an hour, and I've run out of superlatives. Love you, DJ. We'll talk to you on the show soon. All right, Tony Ferguson defeats Kevin Lee. Triangle choke.